Attention, please. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting, One Government Center, at the City Council Hearing Room, October 22nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. The first thing on the agenda is the roll call of committee members. Paul Machado.
Present.
Kristen Cantera-Olivera.
Present.
Jim Souza, I'm here. John Brandt.
Here.
Victor Farias.
Here.
We're missing John Ferrera. He's possible. He might be here. No. So he won't be able to attend tonight. We also have 3 open seats. If anyone out in the public is actually interested in being part of this committee, you can talk to email the Community Preservation Committee, speak with Sandy Dennis, and again, we're looking for 2 seats actually. 1 we're missing from the Housing Authority, and 2 we're missing that are City Council appointees. So any citizen out there who's interested in being on this committee can actually speak to the councilors and possibly put your resume in for them to look through, and you could possibly be on this committee, and we'd appreciate that. Next up, there's no citizen input. That was the next item on the agenda. Item number 5 is acceptance of the meeting minutes from September 21st, 2020. Can I get a motion on this?
Make a motion. Second.
So I have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of September 21st. Is any discussion or questions on the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next up is our eligibility projects. We're going to try and keep the meeting as brief as possible, obviously because of what's going on here. In the past, we've asked applicants to come forward and speak about the project, which we intend on doing if we have questions to the applicant. When it comes time, if you go through to the funding round, at that point, you will have full access to explain your entire project. We will be going through that with more detail, and you will be able to explain your whole project to us. But for now, if we have questions for any of you today, we'll ask you to come up to answer those questions. But we're going to try and just literally see, is this project eligible or ineligible? So that's my intention. The first project up is the Massasoya Firehouse. It's been submitted by Charles and Gloria Jacobson. It's at, we've funded them before, and they're looking for $325,000 under historic preservation. I'll open it up to our board if anybody has any questions here. Does anyone have any questions? Does anybody want to just move forward in recommending it?
I'll make a motion that it qualifies under historic preservation and community housing.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second to accept this application under historic preservation and community housing. All in favor?
Aye.
Raise your hand, please. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. The next project up is the Fall River Tree Nursery. This is submitted by the Fall River Street Tree Planting Program Board. Sandy and I had some questions on some of these projects. We actually submitted questions to Stuart Saginaw, who is the director of the Community Coalition. And this was one of the particular questions we did ask him, whether this project was eligible. So he responded, and I'll read his response here. Street trees are located on general municipal land, not dedicated parkland, so they unfortunately are not eligible for CPA funds. In addition, CPA funds cannot be spent on maintenance nor operating expenses. Street trees, like the streets themselves, are the responsibility of the city's normal municipal budget. So that was his response to that question, whether one thought it was eligible. So according to him, it doesn't sound eligible.
Okay, but can I thank you?
If you want to stand up and just state your name, yes.
Yeah, I want to thank you because it started a conversation and John Perry has offered us the possibility.
Just state your name, please.
Oh, I'm Karen Wood of the Fall River
Thank
Street
you.
Tree Planting Program. It started a conversation with John Perry. We've had some vandalism at the tree farm and difficulty with an irrigation system, so we've lost 10 trees. And the Sewage Commission owns the property. We don't, so anything to improve it is not our responsibility. And there's a short-term use of it. But John Perry's offered us using the potential, if there's some funding for it, and to use the Bullock and Lane property that's behind the cemetery. And I spent the day at Sylvan Nursery to look at how they've set up a nursery. We would be on a much smaller scale, and within the possibilities are there. We're beginning to find out what the
Good.
costs are and things like that.
Good, well, that's
So
good
I
to
think
hear.
it was a good idea.
Yep.
And John Perry also, we're pushing for a tree commission, because that'll make it more organized of how we present the tree plantings in the city. So you've already done your job with us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for submitting an application.
Yeah, thank you.
In the future, though, if you wanted to maybe purchase open space, that might meet the requirement.
Well, that was the original thought of, knowing that there was some possible locations, and that's why that amount was listed. If it'd be much better to be under the protection of DCM for this tree nursery, just in terms of security and access for them, because we collaborate with them.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Sorry if I leave then?
Yes, it's fine, thank you so much. Yeah, you can leave too, Charlie and Gloria, thank you for coming by. I just want to also introduce Sandy Dennis, our administrator, just so that people out there know we might be speaking with her during our conversation here possibly, but I forgot to introduce her. The next item up is number 3, the Florida Historical Society's master plan.
We have to,
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think we have to vote because you're right, actually, we do.
We do have to.
We do have to vote, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. So, does somebody want to make a motion?
So make a motion not to move to the next round?
Okay.
That it's not eligible.
That's not eligible.
I'll second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Paul. I'm forgetting. Next item up is the Florida Historical Society Master Plan. We received a letter from the curator. They actually applied for funds for this project, and they were successful in obtaining the funds. It was for $55,000, so they are withdrawing this application. So we're glad to see that people are out there looking for other possibilities to fund these things. I mean, we definitely look for that type of thing, for leveraging funds from other sources and grants and stuff like that. So anybody who does go through the next round, that's very favorable if you do that. But this particular project, they've withdrawn.
Jim, can I say
Yes.
something? Civitex were the architects for them on that master plan, and I just wanted to let you know, I think they have another application with you.
Yes.
And that master plan process has already been started. We are already working on existing conditions with them.
Awesome.
So that you know that process, part of it has been started.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Can I get your name?
Ann Keen. Ann Keen from Civitex.
The next item is for Historical Society again. This one is for a roof replacement for $350,000. We have funded the Historical Society before doing project on the 2 properties that they own, and one on this particular property also. So I'll refer to Kristen quickly for the historical perspective on it, if you want to.
Oh, I mean, I think it definitely qualifies for historic preservation, there's no doubt.
Does anybody have any questions on the board about it?
No,
Ann is here from Civitex. She'll be working on this project, I believe, also.
Yeah.
So
So,
one thing that I'll say, if anybody is applying for historic preservation, under the category of historic preservation, it's important that you reach out to the historical commission to get a letter of support, because one thing, when we look at applications, we like to see a full application, and one of the things that is asked in the application is the level of community support. And if you have a project that is historic preservation, then we find it important that you have the support of the local historical commission. So the historical commission meets on the third Tuesday of every month. And I know a couple of you have already reached out to me about your applications. And if you would like a letter of support, then you do need to contact us, and you need to just submit what it is that you're doing and come to one of the meetings. Or I think we're gonna be doing Zoom meetings now,
so does anybody want to move this one forward?
I'll make a motion to move it forward.
second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this project forward to the funding round. Any discussion or questions? All in favor to the project? Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next item up is the Dr. Fisk House submitted by the Preservation Society of Fall River. They are requesting funds of $75,000. Again, this project is being requested under historic preservation. We have funded the Preservation Society before on this particular house again, so I would imagine it still meets all the requirements that it had in the past. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments on this project? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
To,
to move it forward.
so I have a motion.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 56 Water Street roof repair submitted by James Padilla, Azar Padilla Realty Trust. It's for the building at 56 Water Street. They're requesting funds for a roof replacement of $250,000. We have funded them before also, so I'll open up to the board for discussion again.
Definitely meets historic
Okay.
preservation criteria.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to move it to the next,
So we have a motion to move this forward under historic preservation. All in favor?
we need a
Oh, a
second.
second, yep. Motion, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that?
Aye.
No opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
If I
Thank you.
weren't sweating, I would stay.
We don't want you to stay. Next time. We want you to stay when the funding round comes around.
See you
Go home and
guys.
be safe now, Jean.
Thank you.
You upset? I did.
You as well. Thank you, have a great night.
Thank you.
Stay well.
See you, sweetie.
So the next
Thank you.
project up is the Maritime Museum, submitted by Justin Bond. We have their architect here. So if you have any questions, does anybody have any questions on this project? I want to discuss this any further. We've funded the Maritime Museum before under historic preservation. That's what is being asked for again. Under this project, they're asking for funds of $790,000 for HVAC system. The total project cost of this particular project is $1,165,000. Again, they're asking for $790,000. Anybody have any comments on this?
Are you obviously looking for more funding from other sources?
Yes, we are. From what I understand there.
Could you just state your name,
Oh,
please?
yeah, I'm sorry.
And just stand, yeah.
Rodney Jocks from William Stock Architects. From what I understand, they're applying for a Mass Cultural Council facilities maintenance grant as well. Typically, those grants average about $100,000. They can go up to a maximum of $200,000.
Okay. Has the, when will they be starting on the electrical aspect of the last project?
I don't know,
Okay.
to be honest.
We'll
From what
find
I
out.
understand, due to the
This.
pandemic, they closed down during the summer. To be honest, I don't even know if the battleship is still open.
Well, when, we'll be voting obviously within a minute or two on this.
Mhm.
If it goes to the funding round, just let that be part of the explanation of the project, of the last, what was funded in the past.
Yep.
So, any other questions for Rodney?
No.
Anybody want to make a motion here?
I'll make a motion to move forward as it definitely qualifies under historic preservation.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to pass this due to funding. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
The next item up is Shane Landing. This project has been submitted by Pat Todd, who is here in the audience, and she had asked if she could come up. They made a modification to this project, so I would like Pat to come up. She can stay in your seat,
Yep.
Pat, and
Yep.
Explain it, and can make it as brief as possible.
I will.
If possible,
I
yeah.
will. I heard
So
you.
if just introduce yourself, and then you can explain it.
Okay, I'm Pat Todd. I run the mill that's at 104 Anawan Street, that's close to the Narrows. We're trying to develop into an arts community. We have 66 artists, craftsmen, whatever. I wanted to amend my request. My request is for a passenger elevator. I didn't want to amend what I'm asking for, but I hired more architects that are historic preservation architects, project architects, envelope architects, structural architects, and I got an amended budget, which, what I put there, I knew that that was wrong. The new estimate is $2,500,000 for this phase.
Okay.
And this phase is to get a passenger elevator so that we can get customers in to look at the artist's work, look at the studios, also to get more customers that can have the public, and eventually we want microlofts on the 4th floor, so the passenger elevator will make it for community housing, so that we put the passenger elevator in to start that project, which will be a couple years.
So will this project already be, will community housing be done during this phase of the project?
No, that's why I didn't check that box off.
Okay, well, community housing, but you checked off recreation.
Yeah, because I didn't know how to define that, but
Okay.
if people are gonna go in and look at arts, and we wanna build,
Yeah.
if that doesn't count, and then we wanted to have a terrace on the entrance that would be a sculpture garden, so I didn't know if
Yeah.
that's, okay, you can take
I
that
would
off.
say, yeah, it definitely fits under historic preservation.
Yeah.
Is this on the
Is it just for an elevator though?
is it just an elevator?
It's an elevator and a spec microloft on the 1st floor, and we need another staircase for handicapped accessible to get to the artist galleries. So the architect did not include originally the staircase. He put the handicap bathrooms in.
So will there be any work done on the building itself at all, or it literally is just the elevator?
We did the roof last year. There will be,
But with this project,
with this
the funding
project,
of
we will
this-
have structural engineers that are looking at the structure of the whole building. We're getting quotes on all the windows, sticking with the historic
Yep.
systems. And I won't be able to pay for that next year, so that's not in this request. I'm also getting loans from banks,
Yep.
but this will supercharge the beginning of the project.
Hmm.
I guess, because does an elevator qualify for historic preservation though?
I know.
Since it's not.
My thought on it is, we're questioning it just because being just an elevator, it doesn't sound historical in nature in that regard. But I'm sort of thinking if we put it through to that, and then I can also ask Stuart if this is an eligible project. I mean, this way, if it is, it will move to the funding round. We can move it to funding, and then I can speak with him within the week. This way you'll know,
Yep,
wow,
that's
it
fair.
really isn't or it is.
Yep, that's fair.
The other question I had was that if
we have a historic structure. Normally, it's to preserve the structure.
Right.
Mhm.
Can we accept a project that is going to alter this, preserve the structure, but also amend it? So you're, from what I'm hearing, you're gonna do things that are gonna change the structure. Sounds very nice, a sculpture
Yeah,
garden, you
yeah.
know, a rooftop, what'd you say, rooftop?
It's not the roof,
patio?
it's on the first floor, yeah.
Okay. That sounds nice, but the question I would also have to ask Stuart is, can we approve a project if we're not actually just preserving the structure? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I was wondering too, because I thought it's for the I thought it didn't count
Yeah.
for the things on the inside.
Well, what we'll do, and
although-
what Sandy did with the other projects that we asked Stuart questions on, she scanned in the entire document for him to actually
Yeah.
read the eligibility application of the others. So
Mhm.
we'll do the same thing with this
Okay.
one. But I think if we at least move it forward, we can always say it's not
Yeah.
eligible. Like,
Okay.
we'll let
Yeah.
you know within a week or two when he responds.
Yeah,
But I hate to say no.
right. There's no
Yeah.
doubt at all, the building itself is historic.
Right.
And as far as it being on the register, so that's something that I have to check, because in some of the ways that it's done on the register, it's listed just as the entire complex, and it's not broken down by the individual buildings
What,
in the,
what I can tell you is, and I'm just clarifying this, and the specialty engineer is telling me it's on the register, but my understanding is that Fall River did all the mills in 1983, and my family chose not to do that. So I have to go through the hoops and ladders to get it by itself, which is what you're saying. So that whole
Oh, okay.
complex, American Printing, is on the register.
Yeah.
And this is an American Printing building. So I do have to work to get it on the register by itself. That's what I was told. I'm learning.
see, because but that's the thing, like, the entire complex is on the register.
Right.
So that really encompasses all the buildings within the
That's,
complex.
I'm hearing the two different things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
But
sort
I
it
mean,
out.
if you want it to be on, just as its own individual thing, then you can just, you can send me an
Okay,
email
okay,
and just let me know that.
okay.
And we can bring it up at the next meeting and put it on individually. But I am pretty certain that the entire complex just encompasses the one thing, and it counts for all the buildings.
That'd be
Because it's come
great.
up before with other things.
That would be great.
Because,
And Jeannie's building is in the same
right,
complex. Yeah.
right, and it had come up for that, but also when we were doing the cultural, when they were looking at making it a
The
cultural
district.
district, and we had to see which mills were on it. That whole entire thing was one complex, and it is on the register.
Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to develop this as an arts center.
Yep.
And I just didn't know how to sort it out in this process. I also heard yesterday from Glenn Hathaway, building commissioner, that there's a carriage house on the property, and he needs me to revamp that. So I'm almost thinking I change my entrance to the carriage house instead of the mill. And the carriage house was built in 1904. So I just didn't know how much I could amend what I put in, because it's just a moving target.
Right.
Mhm.
We just, in our last meeting, we allowed the applicants to amend, right? We came up with that.
Yes.
And I think the easier answer is community housing, if there's going to be lots that are going to meet
Yeah,
that
micro
standard.
lofts, like 400 square feet. You know, it's a different model, it's more for
Right.
arts.
But it might, I think what Paul's saying is it's possible, once it gets to that level of
Then it's
work,
approved.
then it would fit then it would fit the requirement for CPA, is that what you're saying?
So,
Yeah.
so if I just did the spec loft on the first floor, because I'm thinking that's the way I pitch it to people wanting to rent them, even though I don't have them built yet, that doesn't count, you're not thinking?
I don't think that would
I don't think that would work.
Yeah.
I think it actually has to be
Actually live in it.
the working, actually the renovation into the housing is
Okay.
what the funding would be
So-
for.
Yeah, and this new group of engineers, who are very expensive, are gonna put a 5-year plan that is gonna include all that, It's just how do I pay for that before I have a passenger elevator? Because the elevator will make it so I can pay the loans.
Yeah.
I understand, it's
Yeah.
fair.
I would like to say what we'll do is, we'll have Sandy scan this entire document, send it to the coalition.
Yep.
And they will review it to make sure like what is here
Cool,
is, you know,
that's fair.
is eligible.
I make a
Logical.
motion that we authorize this project in the historic preservation category conditionally until we get further clarification from the coalition.
Okay,
Great.
Second.
so I have a motion and a second to move this forward with the, until we hear back from the coalition. All in favor of that? Motion carries.
If you, I have my.
I was gonna ask
It's
you.
got- yep.
I was
It's
gonna
got my
ask you.
email and my number on there, so,
Thanks much.
just let me know, and then you can put it on the next agenda. So I think we're
Cool.
meeting the third.
Can I just
Tuesday.
see, that's the question I had, because this is not preserving it historically.
And this is
But it's
just a
nice.
cartoon.
Yeah, but it's nice.
This is the passenger
Yeah.
elevator.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't like this, I want it to look like a micro lot, look like what it looks like inside.
Yeah.
So this is just an architect.
No, but that's just what
character.
we're asking.
Yep, I agree. Thanks much,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Pat.
I love it.
I do too. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's a beautiful building.
It
That'd be
really
awesome.
is. I
Yeah,
See
know.
my pretty picture?
yeah,
That whole area just.
it is.
It would- it would be so
Yeah.
nice.
All right, thanks.
The next item up is the Notre Dame project. It was submitted by Karen and Roland Langevin. We have Ken Fioli here representing them. They are asking for $100,000 under historic preservation and community housing. They will be creating 4 residential units at the 60% AMI, which is required for this. So I'll open up to the board for discussion.
It is definitely historic, and it would definitely fall under historic preservation. I have already spoken with Ken about getting it, for whatever reason, it's not on the register, but the other buildings that belong to the church and everything in that area were, and I've been in it, I've been in the building next to it, and for some reason, the building next to it isn't on the register either. But it would definitely count under historic preservation. It meets the criteria.
Okay. So,
Make a motion to move on to funding round.
I'll second that.
so I have a motion and a second to move this project to funding under historic preservation and community housing. All in favor of the project? Motion carries. Thanks, Ken. The next project is to prepare Form Bs for the East Fall River and Steep Brook Historic Areas of Fall River. It's submitted by Richard Mancini, the Fall River Historic Commission. This is, they're asking for $70,000 under historic preservation for this project. Vic, if I can have you just stand up and introduce yourself, and just so we can explain to the public what the Form B means and what this project means.
Okay, Rick Mancini with the Historic Commission, Board of Historic Commission. What we're doing is we're submitting an application for $70,000 to do a complete evaluation of the east part of Fall River, which is almost half of the acreage of the city, which has never been evaluated or surveyed in the past. So we're trying to look at that and develop a Form B, which is just a breakdown. What it does is it looks at the, goes back as far as it can, usually to the origin, if possible, of the property, the different owners, and they categorize that, catalog all of the information. And then we also want to do the steep brook area of Fall River. That would be north of Wilson Road. That area was actually the first town hall in the city of Fall River was in that steep brook area. There's still many buildings of great historic value. And again, that's never been truly surveyed and cataloged. So this $70,000 would be to hire consultants who would do that and do a complete analysis. And then we'd be able to set that up in a folder and for future use and historic significance.
Okay. Any comments on this?
He's absolutely right. And it's from a historic preservation perspective, it's important.
Oh,
Because
yes.
we know about a lot of the properties in the other parts of the city, and it seems like, the eastern part of the city really hasn't been delved into very much, and it's kind of forgotten. And then Steve Brook is the area where they believe the first settlement was. And
That's right.
so it's probably the oldest part of the city. I believe the oldest house in Fall River is in Seabrook, down on.
1740.
Yeah,
Yeah, I believe it's the
So-
Wilson home,
yeah.
or Winslow home, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
So, it's, you know.
And this is gonna go
it
into
needs-
a
That
map.
part of the city needs love.
All of this data is going to go into the Massachusetts Informational Survey System,
Mhm.
so that'll be actively involved in, for anyone to look at within the state to know exactly what we have here. Good informational
And it
resource.
helps too in the future for applying for grants and things like that.
And to help preserve some of the historic value.
Oh, absolutely.
So someone just doesn't come in and put in a Highland
Yeah.
development. We're able to preserve the properties and maintain some of the culture and the history that we have here
Yeah.
in the city.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
So I make a motion and move forward?
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to move this forward under
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
John Bray. Under historic preservation, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I just realized I need to go back to my agenda here. I forgot about Al Lima's resignation letter. I don't know if I can bring it up now, or I'll bring it up at the end.
I'll make a motion that we move it to the end of the meeting.
Okay.
And continue with the
Second.
the eligibility applications.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank you, Commissioners.
thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
So Sandy, you're
Where
gonna,
did Jeannie sit?
right at the front.
Right here?
Nope,
These two.
these two.
These two?
Nope, right in
In
front,
front,
yep.
yeah. The first two.
All squared away.
They have to.
So Sandy, are you gonna bring in the next group, is that what?
Yep. Yeah, I'm just figuring out where Charlie's at.
Oh, we have another.
He sat right in the back, in the middle.
Right here, I think so. He's
The
at right
second
here.
and the third seat in.
Yep.
The second and the third. Don't you have gloves, Sandy?
They were supposed to give me gloves, they didn't.
Let me see if I have any. May or may not.
So we're just gonna wait for the next group
I'm
of
gonna
applicants to
I'll
come
go
in?
grab them right now. Rick Mancini sat here, right?
That's fencing gloves
Yeah, money. Where'd you find the quarter?
and change.
Okay, I'm gonna go get your next group.
Wow, $2, that's awesome.
Check it out.
Huh?
Yeah, we'll spray that stuff in.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab the next one.
Better than no dollars. Okay.
I got money. I can buy one.
Huh?
Did you just use that one?
Yeah.
It smells strong. I used it Tuesday night, it smells really strong.
Yeah, if you just all spread out wherever you'd like, it's fine. So as you come in, if everyone would just find a seat, like separate from each other, that would be great, as distant as we can keep it.
I have permission to sit next to my wife.
Okay, you can't sit next to your wife.
I can.
I'll give you permission.
Ditto.
No.
What?
He has to move.
I'm not changing husbands now. Sorry.
So I think it looks like everyone from my applications is here. I saw him before. He was in the building. Chris was like roaming around. Chris-
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he made me
He
down.
roams in and he roams out.
If we have to skip him, we'll come in.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I'll welcome to this, the eligibility round. We're going to make it as brief as possible. In the past, we've asked applicants to come forward and explain their project. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at the project, discuss it between the board. If we have questions for you, we will ask you to come forward. If not, we'll vote on the project, and then that will pretty much be it. Like I say, if we do have questions for you, we will ask you to stand up, state your name and your affiliation to the project, and answer the questions that may be had. So the first project up is the Fall River Fire Museum. We've funded the Fall River Fire Museum before. This was submitted by Mike LePage of the Fall River Fire Museum. They're requesting $498,600 for an entire roof replacement under historic preservation. So,
So it is eligible under historic preservation?
I mean,
it meets the criteria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, would someone like to make a motion for it?
Make a motion to move on to the next round of funding.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this project to the funding round under historic preservation. Any questions from anyone here? All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Motion carries.
Do you want me to give my spiel?
What's that?
Do you want me to give my spiel?
Oh, if you want to,
Okay.
so yeah, yep, go
Okay,
ahead.
so anyone that's applying under the category of historic preservation, so one of the things that we look at in the application, we like to see a complete packet, first of all, but we want to see that you have the support of the community, and if you are applying under historic preservation, we like to see that the local historical commission or any other local historic group gives support to your project. So if you do need letters of support from the historical commission meets once a month on the third Tuesday of every month. And if you would like to be put on the agenda for that, then just let me know. I have cards with me. If you need my contact information before you leave, just come down and get a card.
And the same goes with other departments or boards, I'll say. But for example, there's a project here for a park project, but it won't be the Maplewood organization that will be handling the project. It's really going to be the City of Fall River Park Department. So that applicant needs to go in front of the park board and actually get a letter of approval that they are willing to work on this project. So depending on what your project is, you need a park board approval letter, I'll call it. There's another one for some signage. That will be the same type of thing. So each board, if your project fits a particular board or category, needs their approval.
Can I ask one question?
Go ahead.
If a project's come under historic preservation before and you've had a letter of support in the past, do we need to do it every time they submit for a new application?
I would like to.
If you,
Okay.
yeah, because it's a different phase of the project. And
Yep.
I mean, if anything, we can just update
Okay.
the letter of support.
Chances are, if it's been done, I don't think you have to actually go in front, but they
No,
can.
just.
Okay, so
Yeah.
encourage the clients to do that.
Yeah, I
then.
think so.
And
Okay.
just because it gives an update to the historical
Yep.
commission about how you've gone in the project so far, because
Okay.
we like to see that.
Okay.
Next project up. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
Just state your name and your
Yeah.
affiliation.
Mike LePage, President of the Fall River Fire Museum. I'm here tonight because I thought we were going to discuss a previous project.
We are, but it's at the end of the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, we're just going through all of these projects first, then this way everybody can kind of go, and then we'll be left with you and not have to have everybody sit through
Okay, thank
everything. just trying to minimize as many people in here. The next project up is to save the historic man murals. This was submitted by Joyce Rodricks for the City of Fall River School Department. They're asking for $62,500 to update the man murals in the, can't think of the building that it's in. The old Durfee Tech
Oh,
building
yeah.
on Rock Street.
Isn't it cost?
What, now it's the Resiliency Prep School.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so they're working on the roof of this building now, which is great, because that was one of, we funded this project in the past. And since that time, it's been great. They're actually redoing the roof, which is exactly what this particular project needs, because that was what was destroying these murals. So it's good that that project's being done, but, so this restoration project for this is being asked for, so. Any questions on the board for this? Joyce Rodricks had to work tonight, she couldn't be here for this, so she did send a letter of that. But like I say, we funded it in the past, and it fits under the historic preservation category, so.
I make a motion to move it forward to the funding round.
Second.
So I have a motion by Kristen, second by John to move this forward to the funding round. Any questions or comments by the board? All in favor of it? No opposition, motion carries. Next project up is historic markers for Oak Grove Cemetery and the North Burial Ground. This is submitted by Gail Powers. An organization she's affiliated with is the Friends of Oak Grove Cemetery. She's asking for $12,000 to put a historic marker on each of those cemeteries with signage that delineates when the cemetery was established, when notable people that are buried in these cemeteries. We funded one project already that it's almost complete. Same type of thing. It's a marker. So I don't know if anybody has questions on this. Paul?
Yeah, so there was a project that was funded
Yes.
for something similar?
The cemetery on Purchase Street, we funded.
Okay, was that run by the coalition back then?
We did not.
Okay.
Right.
I actually question whether it counts as historic preservation if we're creating new markers.
Okay.
So I would vote to include it, but I'd ask that it be
Okay.
considered by the coalition. So I'd make a motion to conditionally approve it, subject to coalition guidance.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on the question?
I mean, the cemeteries themselves are definitely historic, and
Yep.
it's part of the education of,
Right.
of a historic cemetery. But I mean, I get your question. I think it's definitely worth
Yep.
asking, Stuart, but I mean, as far as, there's no doubt that the cemetery itself is
Historic.
historic.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference when we did the Oak Grove gates.
Yeah.
That's clearly, we're repairing
Yeah.
historic structures that exist. This is creating something new that does not exist, and I question whether that actually qualifies.
Okay.
So,
So we'll send a letter to them. We will scan this one and send this to Stuart for a question. But in the meantime, Paul made a motion. Does anyone want to second that motion?
John did.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the project? Motion carries. Thank you. The next project up is the Walter Holt Field light replacement at Maplewood Park. This was submitted by the Maplewood Park Independent Youth Baseball League. Joe Shavs, I believe, is here in regards to this project. They're asking for $500,000 for, I believe it's lighting replacement. So we actually sent this we had this project scanned and sent to Stuart at the Coalition, and I'll read his response to everyone. This project is eligible as rehabilitation of a city recreational asset. However, the application should come from the Parks Department, who has jurisdiction over the park. You can't award funds to a nonprofit to do work on a city asset. You'll also want to see a more detailed project budget, breaking out all of the costs. So it sounds like what Stuart's saying is that you probably, if you want to, Joe, if you want to just state your name and an address and your affiliation.
Yes, my name is Joseph Sharps, resident of Fall River. I live on Robeson Street, 154 Robeson Street. I've lived here all my life. I am on the board of directors of Maplewood Independent Youth Baseball League, along with my associates here in the galley.
So what it sounds like is, it sounds like, Joe, that they're saying that you need to go to the park department and have them on board with this project, because they're the ones who are actually going to have to implement it.
Correct, and we actually do have them on board.
Okay.
We met with them on their last meeting. We were there in front of the board, and the thing about this particular project is that the board is actually looking to take down poles or lighting structures of this nature across the city.
Yep.
Their budgets only allow them to take poles down. The reason why they haven't done it at Maplewood is because the park is so alive with the youth of our city playing baseball 6 months out of the year that they don't want to do that. So they're trying to, leave them up as long as possible, but there's no plan to even replace them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to come as advocates, not as a baseball league who wants, as an advocate for our community,
Yep.
to say this is something that is crucial for our community development. It brings in, it does a lot of other things that I would love to have a chance to explain to you if we get through this round.
Yep.
But they're on board.
I mean, the coalition says it's eligible. It's just that you need, once we vote on this, and if it passes through, you need good collaboration with the park department for your funding application. That's
Well
what-
noted.
So-
And we plan to manage that process
Okay.
quite intimately with all the necessary departments that need to be included with a project like this.
Okay.
Yeah, we knew that was the process, that we weren't gonna handle the actual project,
Yep.
because we've seen that in the past with city projects.
Yep.
We know that once this gets to that point, if it gets approved, the city's basically gonna take
Okay.
it over.
And this is Sean Travis.
We knew that,
Okay.
just trying to get the process.
Yep. So that was the letter from Stuart. You heard from Joe. Any comments or questions from the board? Anybody want to make a motion here?
I'll make a motion to move it to the next round.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this project to the funding round for $500,000 request under recreation. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
The next item up is submitted for the Kathy Assad Memorial Playground and Basketball Courts at Massasoit Park. The name of the applicant is Sarah Labossiere from Mass in Motion. They're asking for $25,000 under recreation. So, does anybody have any questions or comments on this first? Is Sarah here? I do have a question. As I looked at the project description, funds necessary to develop nature interpretive signage. So I don't know if you want to just stand up and, state your name and affiliation.
I'm Sarah Labossiere. I'm the Fall River Coordinator for Mass in Motion. And so the question, what's the question?
Well, under the project description, it talks about getting a park grant budget. It does not include funds necessary to develop nature interpretive signage.
I'd just like, in order to improve the placemaking and the educational value, it's so near to the Head Start building, that it would be great to have some placards or some tree identification, we want to incorporate some climate resiliency measures, so some placards.
So the $25,000 is exactly for what?
So the items listed in that sentence, so nature interpretive signage, a memorial plaque dedicated to Kathy Assad, so that would be nice. There is a small plaque on the chain link fence now, but it's dated and it's worn, so if we're refurbishing the park, it would be nice to have a more prominent sign. Some further climate resiliency measures.
Meaning what?
Well, I particularly would like to incorporate some stormwater gardens to reduce the runoff, capture the runoff and use it, that's coming off the basketball courts. And also there's a splash pad incorporated into this that was the mayor's idea, and he would like to see that happen. As you probably read in earlier, at first I mentioned that the largest portion of this project will come through, hopefully we will be awarded the park grant, and then the CD, the Community Development Association has some municipal matching money that will go towards that. So it's almost $500,000 program, so project. So that incorporates some things, but just not enough. So there'll be an acrylic finish over the basketball court. But after speaking with the MVP program people, they mentioned that lighter color palettes are desirable. So just to ensure that we have the funding to do that, and maybe some of the playground equipment.
So all these things you're saying is part of the 25,000?
Yes, so climate resiliency measures to reduce the heat island effects, some different measures that they mentioned when I spoke with the MVP people. So those are just, the original money asked for in the park grant, as well as the municipal funds. That's a fairly bare bones budget, and so I'd just like to add some of these increased features to increase the educational value, the placemaking value, and the accessibility. Accessible playground equipment costs more money than traditional playground equipment, and so I'd like to have as many features of that as possible. Also, maybe need to increase the pavement going to the playground equipment, so that if you're mobility challenged, that you can have a clear path to the equipment. Also, I spoke with Mike Dion, and he was telling me in general, they use an organic mulch at the base of playground equipment, but you can imagine if you're in a wheelchair, that's awfully difficult to move over. So there are other surfaces that cost more money.
Yep.
So I just was aware that in order to increase the accessibility and the value to the residents that will be using this area, that
Yeah, like you said, when I looked at it, my initial thought, funds being used for nature interpretive signage and a memorial plaque, I wouldn't think this money is eligible for that. You know what I mean? But that was in a description of what the funds were for. That's why I'm kind of confused on that. So I don't know what the board thinks about this.
I think that it certainly qualifies as outdoor recreation, and just if we were to grant money, it would have to be specified that it couldn't be used for, things like the signs and.
Yeah.
I think having a breakdown of exactly where the 25,000 would go would be helpful.
I mean,
because
I know the park, I'm really glad to see the application, because it really needs the upgrade. That neighborhood really deserves it. So.
It's solidly in the environmental justice.
Yeah. I was glad to see that park, actually. But
So stipulations, that's fine, whatever you deem.
Yeah, so like I say, signage I would kind of.
Okay.
But even the signage, if it's explaining some of the environmental things, like if it's educational, I would think
I think we'll have to, I think we need to research it ourselves a little bit more, whether it is, I mean, you might want to research it yourself. I mean, under the Community Preservation Coalition, you can go into their recreational links, and maybe there's other things that other communities, there's 170 communities in the state who have this CPA, so you can kind of research what other projects have done in other communities, and maybe narrow your field.
Like maybe not the Kathy Assad sign, but if, I'm thinking maybe the other signage, if it's strictly because it's explaining something.
I don't even know.
And it's educational, then that, I would think that might.
Right, okay.
So,
I'll
it
research
would
that,
be
sure.
worth looking into it.
So, any other questions for Sarah? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to forward it to the next round under recreation.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this project under recreation of $25,000. All in favor? No opposition, motion carries. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Excuse
Again,
me, may I address the committee?
Yes.
Is it okay if we leave?
Oh, yes,
Thank
please
you.
do.
No, you have
We
to.
like when
Well, no, I just didn't want to be rude, I mean, hell, let's sit through.
We like when you leave, Joe.
In the sense of safety.
Get out of here.
Thank you.
And the other thing, Sarah, too, is just to speak with the park board on this
Yes.
project to make sure that it's, on, they're on.
They submitted the park application,
Okay,
so
yep,
they're
good.
solidly on board.
Yep. Okay. Chris Gallagher, well,
He wants to be placed at the end.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, should we
Okay.
make a motion? I'll make a motion to move the projects that Mr. Gallagher is in charge of to the end of the
okay.
discussions.
So do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move Chris Gallagher to the end. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Motion
I'm sorry,
carries.
who seconded it?
Victor.
Victor?
So there's that one. The next one, so we're gonna move the Bank Street Armory to the end. We're gonna move the North Burial Ground to the end. So the next item up, we'll introduce our city planner. Mr. Bill Kenny, our city planner, so we'll discuss this, and we have questions for you. We'll have you speak. And I also, there's several of these we actually spoke with Stuart Saginaw about, so we'll discuss that too.
Who's Stuart Saginaw?
He is in charge of the Community Preservation Coalition.
Oh,
So the first item is the Quikasham Falls Walkway Design Study. It was submitted by Bill Kenny, our city planner, and under historic preservation, the request was for $100,000. It's for a concept plan, correct? So, so this is about daylighting the Quikasham Falls, and again, it's a concept plan. Anybody have any particular questions on this, or do you want me to have Bill speak to us a little bit more about it first?
I don't have any particular questions.
So, Bill, if you want to if you would like to stand up, if you don't mind, I'd just like a very, very brief synopsis on this particular project.
Briefly speaking,
Mhm.
this is, ties into a concept that's been kicking around here for many, many years about, well, really two concepts. First, connecting the waterfront with the downtown. That's been an issue that's been kicked around for a long time. And daylighting the Quakersham. Some of you may remember several years back, I think, when the first Mayor Carrera was the mayor, they had a plan put together, a concept plan that showed an enormous reconfiguration of the downtown area, particularly near where the workout world is. And it was just an amazing display of the falls being daylighted and cooling down towards the Taunton River. And that's not what I'm looking at now. What we're looking at is something a little smaller scale. A walkway or a pathway leading from the Gramada overpass down towards down Anawan-Picasa Street corridor down towards Route 79 to take advantage of the fact that there are currently two locations where the falls actually are daylighted. Just sort of uphill from the Workout World building and then in the courtyard of that mill complex. Both of those spots have spaces where the falls are exposed. And if you can imagine being on the Gramada overpass and looking towards the Taunton River and having some sort of an interpretive display that would show you visually what that used to look like in the heyday of Fall River as a busy port and cotton textile center, leading you from there towards the Taunton River, you would have various opportunities for enhancing some open space. Along that corridor, landscaping could be enhanced. You have the section of the Chamber of Commerce building, right uphill from their building. Could be a little park area. When you get down a little farther, you come to the overpass of one of the highways that can be enhanced, maybe some open space, some murals. People are always interested in putting some murals up here and there. Getting down towards the Workout World building, the exercise place, okay, the uphill section there. Here's your first spot where the falls are exposed. Most people don't know that. It takes some looking to find that out. It's land that is privately owned and state-owned. There's a couple of different jurisdictions there. But the concept would be to show how this could be developed as a little park area to show the falls coming down from the river. Some historic interpretation of the importance of the falls to the city. Then the next step is leading you to the courtyard of that mill complex, where again the falls are exposed. And the concept development would be to have an architect, land use planner, look at these things and say, gee, here's what it might become.
So I'm going to stop you right there, because I think that pretty much explains it.
Good.
I know I've spoken with you about it, and I think that just for our, so this project was also scanned and sent to the coalition, and I have a response of this. He combined this with another project that you submitted that we're not at yet. So there's two, and I'm going to give you, he responded to two projects under this one paragraph, I'll call it. So I'm going to read it from what he said. So he put Quikasham Falls Walkway and the I-195 Park Deck, which is a project within the next two coming down here. These proposals are, again, very difficult to evaluate. Both projects are so speculative and very far removed from planning for an actual park. They are really general city planning studies. Here, it seems the CPA funding is being sought to supplement city planning department budget.
Which is zero, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's why we asked.
I know, but it just doesn't sound like he thinks it's like the funds can go to this, to me, from what I gather what he said. So I'm just going by what you've said. We literally scanned the entire application to him, and I really am very comfortable with what the coalition says to us and knows as far as the regulations of CPA. So I'm not inclined to support it myself, but I'm one board member. I don't know if the other board members have any comments here.
If I could comment.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Based on that standard, none of these projects would be funded. There's always another source of funding. The fact of the matter is that the city has no funds to support planning initiatives like this. That's why we have to resort to groups like this to help us out.
Yeah. No, I get it. No. Does anybody have any comments on it?
In hearing the description, it sounds like, meets a few categories. Potentially historic preservation, potentially outdoor recreation. But we could fund something that's actual, real work that's going to get done. So, if you could find an item to actually work on, do work as opposed to the study, then I think it would qualify.
Yeah, I think it's a very early on stage that I'm not sure where it's getting us. It's like...
It gets you to see the future. And until people imagine what that future could be, the chance of securing funds to actually do the work on the ground is much reduced. That's the way we look at it. This is to show you what might be and to develop some community support for the concept. And then who knows where the funding might come from. Might come from you to put boots, put shovel in the ground. it might come from some other source. But until we have the ability to develop the plan,
Yeah.
to show folks what might be, it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
I guess my question is this, how is this different than a feasibility study that we've funded before for other things?
Is, well, is it, does it
It's
say?
the first step leading towards that. If you
It's
have
not,
the
it's not a
concept-
feasibility study though, right?
The feasibility study is part of it. I mean, where do you draw the line between concept and feasibility? Part of the concept is you would go down and say, gee, here the falls are exposed just upriver from Workout World, but there are ownership questions and there are engineering questions. Then you're getting into feasibility. Concept-wise, you might have Al Lima come and scope, this is what a park might look like here. But then when you move a little bit towards, well, are there permitting issues, are there environmental issues, are there ownership issues? Can we get the cooperation of a private owner to work with us? Maybe there are easements that can be created, partnerships that can be entered into. That's more feasibility.
Okay.
And that's the preliminary pass of that would be part of what we're looking for here.
Right, so
The
basically.
concept and feasibility really sort of marching together. I mean, I could do the concept plan for you
I mean,
while you wait this evening,
The
but
one, the
we
one,
need to know,
I
is it gonna work?
think, I think the one thing about possibly moving it forward is that we're not giving funds away now. We're not allocating funds. So I mean, maybe once we get a funding application, we're gonna have a clarity on what we're actually gonna fund.
Yeah, I'm concerned about what Stu had said.
Yeah.
And I had some questions about these projects myself, whether they fit the criteria. We could conditionally approve it, but we'd have to, I think the applicant would have to work on the funding application to recognize Stuart's concerns and to come up with something that's, you know, that would fit.
Is your position that you don't fund conceptual plans, is that it? Or, I mean, I just need to know what the
Well, I
eligibility standards
don't,
are.
maybe I don't know the definition of conceptual plan as opposed to feasibility
Well,
study.
that's what I was asking.
What's the difference between a conceptual plan and a feasibility
Okay,
study?
concept is you're standing on Gramada overpass and you're looking towards the Taunton River.
Yep.
What conceptually could we create there to bring to people a sense of the history of this area?
Yep.
Would it be some interpretive panels, would it be some photos that are enlarged and placed there? And then feasibility as well. Who owns that? Does the state own that? Do we have to get a permit from them to erect these things here? What would be the cost? Would it be too expensive to do these things? Going down the trail, that first spot where the falls are exposed, same sorts of legal issues, as I said before. Can you have a partnership with the private owner? The MassDOT surely has some jurisdiction there. The highway passes right by. Then you get into feasibility. The concept is, what a nice place for a park. Here's the water falling down. If we cleared some brush here, tidied up the brickwork here, wouldn't that be great? But how much is it going to cost to do the brickwork? How much is it going to cost to do the clearing of the foliage? Are you going to put benches in? Those get more, you know, can you put a bench in? Will the owner allow you? You get more into feasibility and cost. So it's not always a bright line.
I do have one question, and my curiosity on that whole corridor, like, is there any intention on moving the Chamber of Commerce? That would be one thing I would like to see in the plan possibly is that because it seems like there's a major part of that falls is there. So I would be curious to know if there's any movement on that building.
That's partly concept, partly feasible. Concept part is they have a pretty large parking lot, sort of downhill from their building.
So what?
And they have a green space uphill from their building. Conceptually, what could you put there? Would you have a park? Would you have maybe some sort of a display about water power and the history of the river? And then part of the feasibility is the chamber interested in cooperating with you?
Right.
Are they really that serious about it that maybe you could find them another location? I mean, that idea's been kicked around.
Right.
I remember several years ago, the second mayor, Correa, had said that he was actually talking with the chamber and they were thinking of, yeah, maybe we'll cooperate and move someplace else. But that, I mean, that's by the boards, who knows? But
So-
those are, I mean,
All right.
you could have a concept of that space.
Okay.
And you'd probably want to call the chamber up at first and say, we're going to do a concept that would involve your building going away.
All right.
What do you think, you know?
All right, so I'm going to hold you there, and I'm going to let the board discuss it a little bit more, and
Jim, I would make a motion to conditionally approve this.
Yep.
I would like to actually see Stuart Saginor's response, because just having you read it, I'd still like to.
Yep, so,
and-
so Sandy will forward that to
Yep.
all the board.
And could Mr. Kenny get a copy of that, so he
That would
can
help.
see?
Yep.
And maybe he can amend his application as a result of.
Sounds good. You got that? Yep, that's
So I
fine.
make a,
I don't even think it needs to be conditionally. I mean, I think, like, what you're saying, getting him this letter is not really a condition. I mean, I think that makes sense, from what Stuart
well,
said.
from what Stuart said, it
Yeah.
does not qualify.
Well, no, he didn't say that.
No, he didn't.
He didn't say it does not
It's
qualify.
not that
No.
cut and dry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that cut and dry, but we're not funding it yet. So I mean, I'm on board with, I think, hearing what Bill has to say about
I
this.
think it's worth the discussion, because if you look at open space, recreation, historic preservation, those definitely are in this
Yeah.
package. It just depends on how it goes forward, and can they really be, like, are they gonna actually hit those things
Mhm.
with just a concept, or can there be more to it than that? I think it's definitely worth the discussion. I don't think.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've looked at feasibility studies, so that's what I consider as a feasibility
Yeah.
study, so.
I mean, it is, but it's not, see, it's kind of that gray area, but I think it's worth the conversation to discuss it.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? And would anybody like to make a motion on it? Paul, do you want to reiterate your motion, or?
No, because I think that as a result of that discussion, I think we agreed that we could just go in, and then subject to the actual funding application would have to meet the criteria.
Yeah. So we have a motion by Paul,
I will second the motion.
Kristen second. Any other discussion on this motion? All in favor of it? No opposition? Motion carries. The next item up is it's submitted by Mr. Kenny again from the planning director. It's the restoration of the City Hall bell tower. He's asking for $30,030 under the open space category. This was also scanned and sent to Stuart Saginor in Boston, and I'll read you his response to this. So he said, "This is an extremely difficult application to evaluate, as very little of the work is rehabilitation or preservation of the actual historic bells. In addition, the structure is not on dedicated parkland, which is really what would be needed to justify paying for all the work on the surrounding plaza with CPA funds. It's not even clear in the application who owns the land on which the tower sits. This one needs careful consideration and might be best covered in a follow-up telephone conversation." So I'll speak with Bill for a minute. Is the restoration for the actual bells, or is it for the mechanical mechanism that makes the bells ring?
Yes.
Okay.
Both.
It's for the, and they're gonna
Yeah.
restore the bells
It's a
also?
package deal. By the way, did we submit that under just open space or
Yes.
also historic?
Historic preservation.
All right, because those bells are the bells that used to be in the building that used to be here.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's city-owned land, the application says that. I don't know what his confusion is about that. The restoration of the bells, you can polish them up and put them on a shelf someplace, but without that structure, you're not gonna be able to ring them. And, you know, part of that is to get a hold of a state-of-the-art mechanism by which the mayor can sit in his living room at home and on his cell phone, activate the bells. It brings back some excitement and life to downtown.
Yeah.
It's a historic array of bells.
So,
I mean,
so the
if
bells.
he's worried about the structure not being historic, I'll give him that. It's
Well, no,
part of
I
that,
think,
but-
no, I don't think he's saying the structure. Like, so the bells being restored also, the actual bells are being restored also?
Well, they're gonna be spit shined and polished,
Okay.
and the mechanisms that cause them to ring, some of them have to be repaired and replaced. There's a series of plates. I'm not a bell guy, but by looking at them, these things vibrate and cause the bells to ring.
Yep.
So, yeah, the bells are involved in this, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, the
I
application
looked at
says
it,
that.
and
but-
for me, I mean, from a historic preservation perspective, they're historic bells, and you're going to, it said something about polishing the bells and doing all that, and then you're gonna make them ring again. So to me, that's historic preservation of the bells. So at least in that criteria, it fits. I'm not sure so much about the open space, but I think for restoring the bells part, that does fit, and they are definitely historic bells.
Okay.
And I believe they're on our register, aren't they? I'm pretty sure the bells are on the register.
Folks, if I may, I actually looked at
We
it.
worked on this together.
We worked on it together, and we took a look at it.
Just
So Chris Gallagher, Director of Facilities, I work along with Bill, and we went out and took a look at it. The mechanism that actually runs the system, the company is still in business who made the original one. The original one is in the, what was that, the Union Building?
The ILGWU building, the mechanism that activates the bells, the electronics.
Are in the basement of that building. That building has been since sold, and they're going to do something with that building. So we want to get those mechanisms out and put them in a unit that will sit outside, weatherproof case, things of that nature.
So they're publicly accessible.
Accessible to us, because now, right now, once they do that building, we're gonna have no control of it. It's tied into their electrical and all that, so we wanna put it on our own electric that we meter and that, and we run. We looked at the tower. The tower itself is gonna be probably my guys, and maybe an independent contractor to come into some areas that need some patch, some welding. My guys will resurface and paint the tower itself. But the bells, the mechanisms, and all of that stuff is what really this money is for, to
Okay.
get us to that point.
Okay.
But the tower itself will be done by us, but the bells and the mechanism, like I said, that's what this is, to restore those bells, to get those bells to ring.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you there just because I'm trying to keep the whole meeting short.
Yep.
So I'll let our board discuss a little bit more.
Can we also get a copy of Mr. Saginow's opinion on this and also provide that to Mr. Dennis?
Yes.
So that he can take that into consideration in
Will
doing
do.
the funding application?
Yep. Any other discussion on this project?
I'm just, as far as the tower, paint for the tower, I'm not positive as far as the tower, if that would count for historic preservation.
That's why we're gonna do it in-house. We're gonna have our guys.
Well,
do it.
because there's a cost for it, it says $500.
Right, I think we're gonna take that on upon ourselves to take care of that with our guys. We have our bucket trucks, we have our man lifts that we can get up there to do all of that. We'll actually bring in the welder to weld some of the plates to be ready for the bell company. We'll have to hire to come to refurbish the bells, put the mechanism in, and to get the bells to actually ring.
Okay, because I think if you, I'm not sure about the open space part. That's the part that I'm a little iffy about. The historic preservation, I know like some of the things that when you're fixing the actual tower and the sidewalk repair and stuff like that, that won't fall under historic preservation. It may fall under open space. That would be a steward question, because I'm not sure about that. But I know that the bells themselves, at least part of this funding, and I like the way that it's broken down.
Yeah,
At
and the
least
thing
part
about
of
it
the
broke,
funding would count for
the
it.
thing about it broken down too,
Probably
we
not.
have like cherry-picked what we wanted to fund, so we could
Yes.
possibly do that too.
Yeah.
So,
I think that I'd like to make a motion to move it forward and at least have that discussion, get more clarification from Stuart as far as the parts that are not the bell itself, like the mechanism of the bell and the bells themselves.
do you want to
and-
take that on and come up with a letter for him? What you're thinking, so to send it, you can send it to Stuart yourself if you'd like.
Okay, I'll do that.
Could I just interject?
Yeah.
Again, you take the bells right off that structure, polish them, and put them on a rack. They're not a lot of fun unless they ring.
Yeah.
Okay? So to have a really narrow view of this and say, well, the bell's okay, but not what makes them ring.
No, the mechanism part that makes them ring is still part of the historic
You're good with that? Okay.
preservation. Yeah, no, I'm just talking about the structure of the tower.
The tower
Which is
itself.
not historic, and then
I
the
agree, it's not
work on the
historic.
sidewalk's not historic, but I mean, anything that really ties in with making the bells ring, because that was part of the history of the bells were that they rang.
We could have Chris go out there and
I
pull
think,
it.
No, but the mechanism, Bill, that they're talking about, the mechanism to actually make them ring, the cabinet they're gonna go in, that's all part of the bell, so that.
That's part of the
that-
bell.
It's the rest of the
Like-
stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the bell.
yeah. and
Tower,
that would
sidewalk,
be-
stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that would be my question for Stuart, was does that count
Yeah, is the plaza
for
open space?
or?
I think it is, it's space and it's open.
public. It's a public sidewalk. It was kind of stuck into a little niche, but it's
Yeah, but I think
city-owned
open
property.
space is
And it's basically on the sidewalk. When you walk
creating
out of here,
open
you'll see
space,
exactly.
right?
I'm sure everybody knows where they are.
There's actually,
We'll get
one case where the Superior Court judge allowed a 10 taxpayers suit, and that had to do with, City of Norwell, I think, and that had to do with funding sidewalks. Yeah, so.
CPC funding of sidewalks?
Yes, yes. So that's a little area of concern, so that's why.
What did the judge say?
What's that?
The judge said no, or?
Judge said no.
This isn't really a sidewalk, it's a plaza.
But
But the concept of
I think we could- I
open,
think we would probably
the
do
concept
that.
of
We'll
open
just, you know,
space is
just
you're
throw
supposed to be
this
creating open space. And it's not actually creating open space.
It's preserving it
The
though.
space was yeah, but the open space that you're preserving is not historic, and you're not restoring it to like a historic sidewalk. You're not gonna put in the original granite or anything.
We would like cobblestones there. Can you put cobblestones?
Yeah.
Sure, we got some in stock, yeah.
No, it's just, I think it's worth the discussion,
Yeah,
and
I
at
agree.
least part of the Bell part of it falls
I
under
agree.
historic preservation. I'm just not sure about the rest, so it's something that I
Yeah,
can,
we're
I'll
happy
write
to
a letter.
get some of the money and not all of it, right?
Okay, so any other discussion by the board? Anybody want to make a motion here?
I'll make a motion to, I thought I did, to move it forward to the next,
in which,
to move forward to funding round.
which category?
Second now.
Under, right now, under historic
Historical
preservation,
Yeah.
and the rest we'll have to determine.
So I have a motion and a second by Victor to move this forward to funding. All in favor? Any opposed? No. The next item is submitted by Bill Kenny, the city planner. It's for a library armory flex space. It's for the area of the lot in between the Fall River Armory and the Fall River Library. And this was another one, it had Sandy scan and sent to Stuart. So, his response to this one was, this application, it wasn't scanned full. CPA funds cannot be spent on temporary outdoor recreational areas, nor parking. In order for CPA funds to be spent on this outdoors recreational/park area, it would have to be permanently dedicated to recreation by a vote of the council, and care, custody, and control transferred to the park department. No parking for city buildings should take place on parkland built with CPA funds. CPA recreational and open space funds can only be spent on permanently dedicated parkland. The elements of the park meeting the definition of capital improvement. So, does anybody want to speak first before I let Bill speak again, or?
Are you tired of hearing you speak?
No.
I just,
Go ahead.
I don't see how this meets anything with historic preservation, because there is nothing historic that is being preserved. It might enhance the buildings around it, but you cannot use CPA funds to enhance the area. It's strictly for things that are historic preservation, so it would not qualify under that category. As far as the other categories, I'm not sure, but I know for historic preservation, it doesn't meet that criteria.
Anybody on the board have any questions before Bill speaks? Go ahead,
I
Bill.
was just wondering, is there someplace where I could find these eligibility criteria that I don't remember seeing?
Yeah.
On the
I mean,
community,
It's on the city website, under community
I may
preservation.
have missed this, but did
Yeah.
it say you can't use CPA funds to enhance the setting of historic structures?
if you're going by the actual criteria for CPA, yeah,
Or is that in the statute?
it's in the.
Because you're just,
yeah.
by fixing it, you mean the other building is gonna look better because the parking lot is fixed?
That, yeah, you can't, because when you get funds under historic preservation, the work that you do has to be done to Secretary of Interior standards. And the Secretary of Interior standards are set for like building structures, things like that.
Articles, the
Like the
bells.
bells would work, but there's no standard, just because you're enhancing a setting around a historic building, you're not actually doing work to the building, you're not doing any type of historic preservation to a structure or an object or anything like that.
Yes.
So it really doesn't. As much as the idea is a good idea, it would not meet
Because this is
that.
the
It wouldn't meet
this is the
criteria.
allowable chart under the eligibility application, and under it, under historic resources, historic resources are buildings, structures, vessels, real properties, documents, or artifacts listed on the State Register of Historic Places or determined by the local Historic Preservation Commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the city or town. One of the things, you can acquire a historical property or an historical artifact, but you can't create a historical artifact. And under that, that's sounds you're trying to create it,
Yeah.
which is a big X.
All right, I got that, I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. The open space thing, is there some place that it says you can't be creative about your open space and have a flex space that would sometime, when it's not being needed, it was not being used as an open space venue for outdoor activities?
Well, it
could be
sounds,
parking.
well, it sounds like Stuart says it can't be
Who
parking.
is this? I don't know if I like this Stewart guy.
Mr.
Well,
Kenny,
is that in the regulations that you cannot use, that the open space category does not include open space unless it's 100% every day, 24/7 dedicated to park use? Is that?
what's required under the statute for each time the CPA funds a project, what's required is that there be a deed restriction placed on that project. What Mr. Saginaw was saying, I think, is consistent with that. So if it's open space or outdoor recreation that you're trying to create, it has to be permanent outdoor recreation. And I think he's right, that
I do
that
too.
would be.
I think it's kind of a narrow interpretation on this.
I don't. I personally, myself,
It
don't.
squelches the creativity of the
Yeah,
concept.
but also, I don't see like how the parking lot is gonna be recreational if there's a car parked in it.
The idea is that during business hours, the
No, I-
library, for instance, wasn't too happy with me even thinking about this, and, because they thought their parking was gonna go away. I said, no, during your business hours, you're gonna have parking. This is to have an outdoor space, open space, that could be used for outdoor activities to supplement their programming. They could have outdoor events of various kinds. Somebody someday takes over the armory, maybe we have caterers in there, maybe they have weddings, maybe they have events, and they can spill outside and do outdoor activities. It's a really creative space that when it's needed during business hours, it's parking, but after hours, when you're having events take place, it transforms into a beautifully lit and landscaped outdoor space. So that, to me, is a creative way to approach it, and, you know.
It's creative, but it's not dedicated.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference. So if you go, even if you go on the Mass website for community preservation, it'll explain it even further, like, it will give you more details, but I mean, it's on our website as well. And like, that just really is one of those areas that just, we pretty much know that's not gonna.
Well, it is permanently dedicated for open space, except for when it's being used for other things.
Nice try.
Well, thank you, Bill. Ed, does the board have any other questions or comments? Does anybody want to make a motion on this?
I make a motion that it does not qualify.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to not qualify this project. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. So the project was denied. So the next project is submitted also by Mr. Kenny, the city planner.
This is the last one, right?
No.
Oh, it's easy.
You were busy, Bill. You didn't even know how busy you were. This is the renovation of the Jerry Lawton Plaza, which is downtown on Main Street. It's, the categories are open space and recreation. It's asking for funding of $242,000 to redevelop that plaza again, I believe.
Right.
I'll let the board, if anybody has any comments on this first.
I do.
Go ahead.
Have you gotten the park board's approval for this?
No.
Okay.
You got
So
that within their jurisdiction?
yes, when I
Yes.
was on the park board, this is kind of the reason I actually got kicked off the park board. So this was an issue because there was talk about returning it
Benches.
to what it was, which was putting the benches back in.
Yeah.
And there was a building owner, like in the area that did not want the benches back in.
Right.
Because he felt that it was, it would create crime and the homelessness and the drugs and stuff like that. And so, some of us that were in favor of developing this, it didn't go well, and we ended up not on board anymore. And then the whole thing got squashed, so this is under the jurisdiction of the park board, so if the park board does not approve having this happen, then you would need the park board on board in order to be able to get funding for this one.
I understand. Could I ask, were you pro-bench or against bench?
I was pro-bench. To me, the idea of putting that back to the original idea of Jerry Lawton was all about helping the homeless. And to say we're gonna take the benches out and we're gonna let the homeless go somewhere else, and to me, that was a bad idea. And so, yeah, I'm pro-bench, and I like this idea. It's just that I know that you will need to have the park board's approval in order to be able to do it.
So can you approve this contingent on getting that approval?
Oh, well, no, I mean, that would go for the funding
Yeah,
route, but I
eventually,
think,
yeah.
I mean, as far as, is recreation,
So,
I don't think open space
This
is-
project, we also scanned and sent to Stuart. So I will read you his response to this.
Okay.
Similar to the other project that we just discussed, the status of this land needs to be researched to determine if it is permanently protected parkland under care, custody, control of the Parks Department. If so, then the project would be eligible as rehabilitation of recreational land. If not, these improvements would be considered streetscape improvements, and those are not eligible in the CPA fund. So it's as simple as that.
Well, it's-
Interestingly, the streetscapes folks say it's not eligible for streetscapes because it's really a plaza.
No.
Jimmy,
It's-
they have, Kristen, they have to determine, is that piece of land parkland or is it owned by the city?
Right.
If it's not owned by the park and it's owned by the city, then it's not eligible because it's considered streetscape.
Right.
So you need to determine who owns and controls that,
Yeah.
park or city. If it's park, guessing bond, if it's not park, it's.
Yeah, but see, that was part of the issue too, was because they had to come before the park board to get the approval, but then Jazel was going to include that in the streetscape plan
Because it's city-owned
after.
land.
So that really is, yeah, that's an issue.
So park board approval would be the necessary,
If it really is under the park board
so we don't know that for
purview, you have to, you really have to figure that out, because it went
I
both
thought you
ways.
said that it wasn't the park board. when you-
No, it went before the park board for approval, and then Jazel decided that it was just gonna be part of the streetscape anyway. So that's where the confusion comes in of who actually, who has the purview over it in the first place. So you need to find that out, and if it's the park board, then you do have to
Do
get
I have
park
to
board.
call Jazel?
I'm sure there's ways you can find it out.
Anybody on the board have any questions or comments for Bill or discussion here? Would anybody like to make a motion on any particular direction here?
I like the project. I mean, I'll make a motion to move it forward as long as he meets the requirements when it comes up for the funding round. Park board.
In which category?
Open space. I mean, recreation, I
I'd
guess.
say recreation.
Recreation.
Because you're not creating open
No,
space, it's already
recreation,
there.
yeah.
But, yeah. Does it meet recreation if it's just benches though? That's,
It's relaxing.
And I'm
No,
thinking
passive
it's more,
recreation.
and I'm thinking it's more open space than recreation.
No, but I think passive recreation, it can still count,
Well-
because it's already open space.
Yeah,
You're
but
not
you can-
creating
you
any
can-
new open space.
You can amend a park. I mean, you can do work in a park that
That's-
already
Yeah,
exists.
if it's a.
Why don't we, I
if
would
it's a
suggest,
park.
why don't we approve it in both categories now?
And then,
And then we can see what the funding application looks like, and, you know, I think we could always, like, say, no, it's not
yeah,
recreation.
yeah.
And I wanna review the case that I was talking about. I wanna review the judge's finding in that case and see, because that involves sidewalks,
Okay.
so.
So you want to amend your,
So make a motion to move to funding in open space and recreational, providing the park board does own parcel.
So we'd have to find out first if the park. owner-
You're right, yeah.
the
Yeah, but
city
he
owns
can
it.
do, I mean, we can move it forward,
Yeah,
and
then
then
he
if we
can-
find out that it doesn't, then it just doesn't go anywhere after that. It's,
so do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
So I have a motion and second to fund this project under open space and recreation for 242.
not to fund it, to move it.
To move it forward to the funding round, I'm sorry. To move it forward to the funding round for $242,000. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? No. Motion
Chairman,
carries.
could I just clarify, sir, this will perhaps ultimately qualify if it's park jurisdiction. right?
Yes.
If it's city, then
Right,
No.
Yeah.
correct.
we'll find out.
Yeah. Lastly, this is another project submitted by Bill Kenny, Director of Planning, which I have to commend you, Bill, for like coming up with projects. I mean, I like the fact that
Thank
you've
you.
like going through and like, that's exactly what a city planner should be doing. I appreciate
Yeah.
this.
It's,
You know?
it's the best job in the world.
Yes.
And you're utilizing the master plan for the city, and for me, that is huge.
Yeah.
So
We aim to.
I will give you kudos there.
So this project is called, Bill's calling it the Spindle City Park Feasibility Study. Is requesting $175,000 under open space and recreation. Again, I'm gonna give it to Bill, because I can explain it, but he's gonna explain a little bit better, the location of it and exactly what he wants to do, but try and make it brief.
I'll do my best.
Thanks.
If you want, we can just walk outside the building and look between Third Street and Fourth
Yep.
Street. There's this gap underneath the cars are flying by on 195. The urban mythology is that when this building was built, they also intended to deck that portion of the highway for a parking garage to serve this building. And the story is that they didn't have the funding to do it at the time. Over the years, people have looked at that and said, gee, wouldn't it be nice to do something with that space? Maybe deck it for parking, maybe deck it for parkland, open space. There's been various myths that have developed. First, that since 9/11, the feds won't let you deck highways. Second, that engineering-wise, it can't work. There's no abutments there. It's just, it can't be done. Third, the cost is $1 gazillion. It'll never work. Well, it turns out in Boston right now, there's one project underway called Parcel 12, where they're decking a section of the Mass Pike. There are two others about to get underway. November 2018 edition of Planning Magazine, the professional magazine of city planners, shows 6 or 7 projects throughout the country that have been successfully decked for parkland. So the FEMA won't let you do it argument goes out the door. The engineering is a myth. The abutments are there. They were there because they thought they were going to deck it with something back in the day. And the financing, nobody's ever done a study to determine what it might cost to do this. So when people say, yeah, it'll never happen, it costs too much, we don't know that. And the theory is that this will help repair if we could deck this section with a park. Number one, downtown retail is going to depend on people living downtown that have disposable income, which we don't have right now. To get people downtown, one of the greatest amenities is to have open space and parkland. So the urban renewal plan specifies the extreme lack of open space in downtown. The urban renewal plan talks about this proposal as maybe being a real signature event in Fall River, to have this sort of deck created. The attraction for housing development is clear. We think that a feasibility study would get rid of some of the old myths, would give us an idea of whether it's feasible. Can this actually be done? What permits would have to be obtained? Are there any federal or state policies that just say, no, you can't do it? What would we have to do engineering-wise? Can it be done? You don't want to be in a position where someday a bag of money falls out of the sky and you say, gee, now we can build that deck, but we're not shovel-ready. So that's where we want to head eventually with something like this. And that's all I have to say about it.
Okay. How did you come up with the funding, like, how did you come up with 175,000?
I consulted with one of the premier city planners in Bristol County, Al Lima, and he and I came up with a number,
Okay.
subject to change.
Yeah. So again, I had read this earlier, because we had scanned them both to Stuart. Again, his response to the I-95 park deck, these proposals are again very difficult to evaluate. Both projects are so speculative and very far removed from the funding planning for an actual park. They are really general city planning studies. Here it seems the CPA funding is being sought to supplement city planning. That was his response, so I just wanted to...
He's absolutely right.
So I just wanted to
Supplement
read
their
it
funding, which is zero.
again. So, any other comments from our board or questions for Bill?
In the chart, can we create open space?
I think
Yeah.
you can, yeah.
Yep, you can.
You can acquire, but.
Yeah.
No, but I think.
So open space is land to protect existing and future well fields, aquifers, and recharge areas, watershed land, agricultural land, grasslands, fields, forests, fresh and salt water, marshes, other wetland, beaches, dunes, coastal lands, land to protect scenic vistas, land for wildlife, natural preserves, and land for recreational use. Creation means to bring into being or cause to exist.
Says bring into being, okay.
Yep, so you can.
But see, the difference between that and Jerry Lawton Square, what I was saying about open space, Jerry Lawton Square is already mostly,
Yep.
but if you're enhancing it, that's.
So, would anybody like to discuss it anymore or make a motion on any particular? Any motion in any direction?
I'll make a motion that it qualifies in both categories, open space and outdoor recreation.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round under open space and recreation. Any other discussion on it? All in favor of the project? Motion carries. I like that one.
We're going to have the opportunity, when we get the
Yeah.
actual
Oh, yeah.
funding, we can say, well, this doesn't qualify,
Yes.
right?
And for this one, I think a good thing would be like a little more of a breakdown of why it's gonna cost that much money. Like, you know what I mean? Instead
That's
of
what we
just,
hope to get you for.
yeah, instead of just throwing out a number, but something to actually
Yeah.
see what that number
Sometimes
is.
you just gotta throw it
I mean, it's that way on all projects. I mean, the more detailed the cost estimates are, I think it just makes more sense and it's easier for us to kind of vote on and deliberate
Yeah.
on, you know?
Right, right.
So the motion carries.
Can I go home?
You can go home.
I want to thank all of
Thank-
you for your attention and for the questions. I appreciate it. I serve a lot of boards for the city. I know how hard you all work, and especially the guy from the Conservation Commission. Nice to see you all.
Thank you,
Thank you
Bill.
very much.
Thanks.
And to the audience, I'm sorry I talked so long. Kept you-
I tried to keep you quiet.
I did the best I could.
Briefing.
It was pretty brief.
Okay, you got
The
5
next,
minutes of debate.
what's that?
You got 5 minutes before the
Okay.
debate starts.
So the next item, the next items up are submitted by Paul Ferland from the City Water Department. There are 4 of them. The first item is the Interlochen Cultural Resource Stabilization Project and Interpretive Ranger. Again, it was submitted by Paul Ferland. Under Open Space and Historic Preservation, he's asking for funds of $40,400. Would anybody on the board like to speak first before we hand it over to Paul for a moment?
I have concerns about hiring an employee. I don't think that qualifies.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
I'll,
And historic preservation, because what are we preserving by hiring them?
Paul, do you want to speak for a moment on those 2 questions?
So, myself, Paul Ferland, Administrator of Community Utilities. I also have Mike Labossi here from my staff. So just, this project came about, I think some of you have been on the interlogging tours that we've had open up some of our restricted space up to the public to be able to have guided tours through those particular areas. The historic preservation that we're really looking at, and this is kind of a two-part proposal. One is that we really want to go in and try to protect and look at those structures that are in there. So you have the ice house, you have the old boarded mansion foundation and structures that are in there. All the beautiful granite walls that line the walkway down the interlogging path. You know, we've naturally let the forest come in because that's what we want to do for the water preservation of the North Watuppa Pond. But there's a lot of damage that's occurring to those particular structures. We want to try to stabilize some of those structures and see what it would, try to see what we could do. Pretty much, itemize everything, see what's there, and then be able to see what can be done to stabilize it. That's kind of the first prong approach of it, of this application, more the historic preservation. The other spot is more the open space, and the hiring of an employee. It's not an employee, it would be a part-time person. We were looking almost like a ranger position. That would be somebody that would be able to open our restricted spaces up. So far, we've done it by volunteerism of my time, Mike's time, and of some of our other staff's time, as well as other volunteers from the community who have guided those tours. This would be somebody that would be able to give more of an access to the general public to some of those areas, be able to educate and set up some educational programs for those guided tours and other tours throughout the whole entire bioreserve area. So, Mike, do you have anything to add on that?
I think that's well done. Mike LaBosse here, I work for the Water Department. I'm the forester. So the stabilization is kind of self-explanatory. Root growth, trees falling into, they're contributing to the deterioration of something that's really a relic to begin with, but it's one of the most iconic and sought-after pieces of the Water Department assets. So we want to be able to share that, we want to be able to share it safely, and we want to be able to preserve what's there from, accelerated deterioration. But the other part of that, and that's the kind of the dynamic tension of it, is it's a little bit outside of the wheelhouse of our principal mission, which is the water supply and the protection of the water itself. This is sort of in the realm of architecture, cultural history. So we're trying to expand our capacity to be able to do that in a restricted area, trying to find ways that we can accommodate the public to really tease out that history, that sense of place, that cultural aspect, and to expand the resources that we have to be able to do that, to bring that to the public. So it's kind of there's an abstractness to it, but the point is to make it more available to the residents of Fall River.
I agree with Paul, though, like the hiring, like using the money to actually hire somebody, that just seems impossible. That part of the
I think the
plan.
historic preservation part actually,
Yeah,
because if it's stabilization for
The
the
stabilization
foundation,
part
then yeah,
seems like
definitely.
funds for sure, but
Definitely.
the part that says hiring ranger salary.
Right, so the one thing that you gotta think about though too is we're the water department, so all of our funding comes from our ratepayers. Our ratepayers are, we supply them a service and a product, the water that goes to their houses. So for our department in particular, to support a position like this or something wouldn't be within something that our ratepayers should be burdened with. And that's the particular reason why we put this in for the CPC.
Right.
No,
But I don't
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it fits within
Yeah.
the statutory.
That part of this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just not the historic part, that
Yeah,
does,
that part.
it's just the hiring a person to do that.
Like if that's part of the, if it moves on, if that's part of the funding, probably not gonna fund it. That's all, right?
Well, not that part of it.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Just as some additional guidance, I appreciate what you said, and I understand that. What if there was interpretive material such as, a booklet or a flyer or something along those lines, would you see it the same way, or would that be different?
Particular points that reach for public outreach, particular, let's say, benchmarks that we had to create out of that type of position.
And this could be a different grant, if it doesn't, obviously we wouldn't switch pitch you, but, you know what I'm saying?
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay,
Because
so.
you're still paying for a person, though.
No, let's put that aside.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, what if, rather than a person, what if there was some, more like a static interpretive things? Like a booklet that might explain what these things were out there, or,
I don't think so.
Because what you'd be doing is you'd be hiring someone to prepare that booklet,
okay.
which is very similar. And I think those are great ideas. But I just don't see it as fitting within this.
Yeah, because how, it's that, what you're saying, just that one item, not the stabilization part, what you're saying, it's not historic preservation, what you're saying.
And it's not open space.
And it's not open space. So it's like, it's gotta fit those two categories, you know what I mean? Whatever it is has to fit that, that's really neither. So that's why we're just saying
We
that.
accept that.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
I mean, I would make a motion to move it to the funding round on, strictly for historic preservation.
yeah. Yeah. I agree. So,
I'll make a motion to move it to the funding round under the category of historic preservation.
I'll second that.
so I have a motion and a second to fund this under historic preservation for $40,000, $400 to move to funding. All in favor? Yeah, so I'll just reiterate that, that part of it, like, is not, I wouldn't work on that part. Next item up is submitted by Paul Ferland. Again, it's Barnabas Blossom Workshop Restoration. They're asking for funding of $250,000 under historic preservation to restore that particular building.
I say we move it forward. This actually came before us before, and we did move it forward
We did.
because we know that it meets the criteria, so I just say we move that forward because it meets under historic preservation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So any other discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, motion carries. Next item up is by Paul Ferland again, Northwood Tupper Pond Seawalls Condition Assessment and a Restoration Plan. They're asking for $75,000 under open space and historic preservation to restore the seawalls around the Northwood Tupper Pond. Any discussion by the board?
I just have a question. When were those walls put in?
Those walls were put in late 1800s, from my understanding. Some were done possibly by Civilian Conservation Corps that was out in that area. I know they did the interceptor drain in 1915, but I believe most of the walls were done prior to that.
So the specific, like the walls you're speaking of, surely the ones on Wilson Road are probably, is it all of that, or is it others around the perimeter of the pond?
So what we really want to do is get a full categorized inventory of what's around the whole entire pond. So there are some walls, you have the ones along Wilson Road that flank both the north and south. We want to, identify those, but there are other ones that are still very visible. So 195 and 24, that area, there are some historic walls down in that area. There are some over by the 1875 pump station, just the extents of those we're trying to figure out, and there's some actually on the east side as well in certain particular areas.
Would this have to be go in front of the Historic Commission?
Yeah, you would want to come before us to get a letter of support.
And I think when you go in front of them too, I think maybe it would be good to have like documentation on where the walls are, and because I think of 195 as a newer highway, I'll call it, and I'm thinking like it's a newer wall because I'm thinking the 195 is new. But if you maybe give them an exact location of where they are, so they can know if they are the historical walls. Going by Wilson Road, you can see that those are.
Yeah.
The others,
In
my head, I'm thinking like 195 is not.
Some might be, some might not.
Yeah.
But I think a condition study that would tell you whether or not some of them on historic or not.
Right, so that's what this
Yeah.
primary is, to do a condition study and
Yeah.
to find the extents and identify those walls so that we
Yeah.
can apply for future funding.
The other thing that would be good too is, I'm not even sure if any of these are on the register, but if the walls are not on the register, it would be good to put them on the register because then you'd probably be eligible for.
So the whole waterworks complex, which is the 1873 pump house,
Right.
the stand tower, and a couple of other those buildings, the gatehouse at the Northwest Upper, that whole set is a part of the National Register.
Yep.
As a complex. The wall, the cut granite wall that's along the Narrows actually is built into the gatehouse, and the wall near the 1873 pump house, same thing. It's so they were built at the time, but I don't know if they're specifically. I don't, you know, the what is it? The page B or the exhibit B of that plan doesn't actually call out the wall, and maybe this would be a good time to amend that.
Yeah.
To make sure that that's considered a part of that cultural landscape.
Okay, that would.
And that's how we look at it.
Yeah, that would be a good idea to, because yeah, if you need to, but I'm saying just strictly for, besides the Form B for the state, to make sure that it's on our register as well. Because I mean, the buildings themselves might
Right,
be.
I don't know that it is,
so
so that's a good point.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll look and see if any of the walls are on the register, and if they're not, it'd be a good idea to put that on.
Thank you.
Any motions?
Oh, I'll make a motion to move this forward to the next one. Under historic preservation. I mean, open space, I'm not sure if it's open space so much as.
I would do,
Historic
I think historic
preservation,
preservation
yeah.
would be the one.
I think so.
Any second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this to funding under historic preservation. All in favor? No opposition, motion carries. Next item is submitted also by Paul Ferlin, Article 97, Protection for Vulnerable Open Space Parcels. We received this last year, we had moved it forward, and with some debate on part of this, Mr. Labossiere withdrew this, so it definitely fits the categories. Article 97?
Oh, I thought, the Article 97, I thought it didn't.
Isn't the same one as last year?
It's the very same one.
Yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought this was the one that didn't qualify because the funds wouldn't pay for.
No, we had some debate on it.
Yeah, that was a legal question that we were waiting for a response from Corporation Council.
Right.
And we didn't want to hold up the full package, so we ended up pulling the application. So that we could
This is the exact same thing, correct?
Yeah, but did it qualify? That was my.
I don't know what the outcome was.
Yeah, we haven't received the outcome yet.
So-
We're going to resubmit and discuss with Corporation Council and ask for an opinion.
Okay, so it's the same exact thing, they're still waiting on Corporation Council's recommendation on it, so, I mean, we can move it to the next round this way, they have 3 more months to possibly get an answer. So, if someone would like to make a motion on it,
I'll make a motion.
to,
Move it forward.
under,
On the recreation.
and open space?
On open space.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to move this forward under recreation and open space to the funding round. All in favor? No opposition, motion carries. The last item for the water department submitted by Paul Ferlin is the Thomas Borden Farm Acquisition and Protection. They are requesting $610,000. They have it circled under open space, recreation, and historic preservation. So it's there is a building on the property, and obviously there's land surrounding the property, and it could be a recreational facility too.
Didn't we forward this last time?
Mhm.
Because it met all the criteria?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I say, I'll make a motion to.
Paul has a
forward-
question.
Oh,
How old is the farmhouse?
1800s?
Yeah.
It's approximately 1850. 1850, so 150.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I will make a motion to move forward to the next funding round under open space, recreation, and historic preservation as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move this forward to the funding round of under open space, recreation, and historic preservation. All in favor? You have a question, Paul?
No?
All in favor? No opposition, motion carries.
Mike, let me know if you need me to update just the dates on the letters, because I know I wrote at least one of these letters.
Yeah, I heard the question answered before, I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So could we get a motion to bring back the Armory and the North Burial Ground?
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second to bring back the item number 16 and item number 17 on the agenda. So the first one is for the Bank Street Armory, submitted by Chris Gallagher, City of Fall River. He's requesting, it's supposed to be $350,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, $350,000. Under historic preservation. So they are looking to replace the higher roof.
The upper roof,
The
yes,
upper roof.
which you see at the front of the building when you approach the building, the front, that roof that's up there. We have already done the back and the chimney, the lower roof. The gym roof is great shape, that's all slate. No real issues with that, no leaks inside the building, but that upper roof needs to be.
Chris, actually, I took a tour of the entire building, onto the roof and everything. It's in desperate need of repair.
When did you do that?
What's that? I don't know, a month or so ago?
Yeah.
Less
You were
than-
invited, you didn't show up.
No, I was not.
Yeah, you were.
No, I
We
wasn't.
asked several times.
No, you
Where
did
you were.
not. No one told me.
Did we not?
I think we did.
I thought we did.
Anyway,
No one.
so it was really impressive, and it's also like slightly scary to see how the deterioration is so bad up there. So I can testify that this is definitely a project that needs to happen.
Well, it definitely fits the criteria for
It does fit the
historic
criteria.
preservation, so I just make a motion to move it forward. I mean, I don't think there's any discussion
I
that
don't
it
think
meets
so
the
either.
criteria, so.
Do I have a second? So I have a motion and a second to move this forward to the funding round under historic preservation for $350,000. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, motion carries. Next item is the North Burial Ground submitted by Chris Gallagher. It's, looking for $25,000 under historic preservation to restore the iron gates at the North Burial Ground entrance. So
Definitely meets historic preservation criteria, so I'll.
So just
make a
want to give
motion.
you a real brief, we did file some bids, masonry and all that stuff, with Mike Keane. That was all completed. The GC bids, I believe, came in, or just came in Thursday. Those bids and the tabulation of that should be coming out shortly. So we'll know what all of that was. We'd like to move the iron gates forward. One of the things we are going to move, and we're gonna pay out of,
I'm gonna hold you right there, just because we are gonna move this forward. So all of what you're saying, you can tell us in the funding round.
you got it.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
thanks, Chris. In other words, get out of here.
Oh, I'm actually gonna stay for your last one. so.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? No opposition, motion carries. So the next item on the agenda, so that's all of our eligible projects. The next item on the agenda is the Fire Museum. We'd like to just have a discussion on this with Mike. If you want to come down for a second, or you can stand up there either
Yeah,
way.
do you mind if I move forward?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is this front seat too close, or?
Sit in the front row, Mike.
What?
Yeah, right in the front row. You can put your stuff on the table, Mike.
So this discussion is about the FY '19 funds that we appropriated to the Fire Museum. It was funds appropriated under historic preservation for $172,935. Obviously, we're moving into FY '22, but this project has not begun yet, and part of the problem was the ownership of this property, and that's why we're here. So So I'll let Mike speak. If you want, again, try to keep the conversation brief.
I'll try to just keep it real brief. I'd like to just go before Mike. I worked with previous corporation counsel and stuff trying to turn the property kind of ownership to the museum. We were working on it, several things were in the process, and they were working on it and stuff. Obviously, we all know what happened, things happened, so, you know, that kind of came to fruition. As far as I understand, Mike was putting in for it, and everything changed because of it's a city property, procurement and stuff, so the funding and the money that he did receive was due that it was going to go under a nonprofit, all of that stuff. But because it is a city property, it has to be done prevailing wage, procurement and stuff like that, which then really the budget was kind of now a little short on. By going that way was going to cost more money. So before he got into half of the windows and not having enough funds and coming back and waiting for us to do what we were trying to accomplish, and then things happen, this is where Mike is today. So I asked, it is a really nice building. Maybe he goes forwards with this. We'll help him with the procurement on my side because it is going to come through my department. We can help him. Let's see how far we can get with the funding that he does have right now and see what we may have left. I would like to use part of that funding maybe with him to work with one of our architects, whether it be Mike Keane, whether it be Stock Architects or somebody like that.
Who is the architect on the project at the moment?
Keene.
Okay.
So there you go, we get that and try to get some sort of numbers of what it's gonna cost overall, which, Mike, do you have them already, that it was gonna be?
I have the numbers from the previous architect, Ventrone, which
Well,
was.
let's
So we don't even want to.
Yeah, we don't wanna go there.
discuss
So let
which-
me get with Mike, let me see if we can come, see what kind of more money may need to be done. Maybe we could do 15 windows this year, and
Well,
move to the
the
next one.
thing about it is, like, we need to know in the grant agreement exactly what the funds were for originally.
I have it right here.
So what does the grant agreement say?
Well, I don't have the actual contract, but I have what I have listed here
Well,
that I
we-
had
we
applied
got-
for.
Well, that
And
doesn't
was
really matter.
awarded.
Because we need to know what's exactly in the grant agreement. Because I know we
That's the
cherry-picked what we wanted it for.
That's the contract.
That's the grant agreement,
The award agreement.
the award agreement. Because like I say,
I'm pretty sure it's everything that was here because it's the total dollar amount. It's that amount that
For
you
the
mentioned, the
very
172, we
first
were fully funded on.
I
No, 2
actually,
years ago.
the FY19 one?
1918, 2018 was, so it's 2 years, that's why the
So
concern
when,
is.
when does this,
Mike, can I
when
see that
does
for a
this
second?
grant agreement expire?
This next week.
Next week. So can we make, I mean, I'm willing to like make an extension for, even for like 2 months. Maybe not, like normally we've done extensions year by year by year, but maybe we can like do an extension for like, I know, January 1st or something like that, and at least it'll give you time to reevaluate what the grant agreement was for. And now, because it's really under the city's
Yes,
jurisdiction,
yes,
correct?
because we were
Not
trying to
the
change it
fire.
over to them, so.
Right,
That's where the delay was.
right. And then, so now you have to go out for
Big
procurement.
documents, procurement, stuff like that, so I'll have to get with Mike, making sure, Mike Keane is what I'm talking about, and getting with him, making sure that those budgets and all of that stuff, because again, it was the previous architect.
Again,
that
we,
was-
you, one thing you have to remember is what's in the grant agreement. If I'm just saying.
We'll go
'cause I
through that
feel-
whole agreement, we'll go
Because if
through
it
it all.
says if it's for windows and you're fixing doors, that can't happen.
No, it does have doors in there, has ADA, it was all about, I believe, the outs part of the structure, which was the windows and the doors and things of that nature. But we'll go through it, we'll get exactly what it is, we'll find out the full funding agreement, I'm sure Sandy can pull it for us. We will go through that, we'll sit with Mike, we'll go over it with Mr. Keane, go through all of his stuff.
Because even, like, if it becomes more money, which it probably will, this needs to be approved by the city council also, not
Right.
just by us.
Right.
So,
So we'll go move forward with it, and we'll give you what Mike's recommendation is, what he has, what he's got, what we feel that we can do
All
with
right.
this, and then either we can do what we have, and then save the rest for next year to come for the funding to finish the project and do it in phases.
all right. I'm gonna hold you there.
Right, and go to the
I'm
next
gonna
one.
hold you there for a moment. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion
Yep.
that we extend the deadline to, I would say February 1st, that way.
Okay.
Because with the holidays
Yep.
coming up, it just
Yep.
gives a little more time, and then with COVID, it makes
Yep.
things a little more difficult. So I make a motion that we extend the deadline to February 1st to give them time to get everything, all the ducks in a row.
I'll second.
Right, right.
So I have a motion and a second to grant Mr. Gallagher and Mike LePage the time to reevaluate this project, come up with a new cost estimate of it. We're gonna give you a 3-month time frame, and basically that's it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing I have to go back to is on
I'm sorry.
item 3 under this.
Tomorrow?
On item 3 under this, Al Lima, who is one of our board members, resigned, and I did not acknowledge that at the beginning, and I want to acknowledge it now. I mean, Al was on for a short period of time, but there was a lot of conflicts with other things he's on. We appreciated his time on the board. He was the catalyst of getting CPA passed in Fall River, so my kudos to him on so many things. But, you know, I was sad to hear him go, but there is a vacancy. Again, I'm going to put it out there to the public. If anyone's interested on being on this board, it is a working board. You do have to spend some time on this. It's not quite that simple. Just, you know, show up and leave a meeting. It's a bit of a work, but we would love to have 2 more people on this board that are city council appointees. So anyone out there in the public that is interested, please contact Sandy Dennis at Community Preservation Committee in City Hall. So any other questions right now? So that's the last item on our agenda is deed restrictions and the legal opinion. I'm going to hand this over to Paul Shadow, who's been doing a phenomenal job with this, I have to say. Long overdue, I mean, awesome. So.
Okay, so let me just explain, put on the record the process. What I did was I contacted the president of the Bristol County Bar Association, and he agreed. I asked if I could send out a notice to the bar members and an application form. He approved that. I prepared a letter explaining what we were looking for and a short application, and that was emailed out to the members of the Bristol County Bar Association. That went out to 181 attorneys. I also did a similar thing with the Fall River Bar Association. That went out to their membership. I think there's some, I don't know, like there's some people are members of both, so I don't know if, probably about 70 attorneys in Fall River. So I don't know if that's 70 additional or maybe just 20 additional, et cetera. But we were looking at notifying approximately 200 attorneys. We got responses. It was a little bit slow at first, and I was a little bit concerned. But right now, we have 8 attorneys who have applied.
That's great.
We're in the process of getting, I think, 4 of them need their vendor forms to be completed, but the rest of them have already done that. We have 1 attorney who's already provided us with a historic deed restriction on the Marine Museum, and that has been approved by Corporation Counsel. I've sent that out to all of the other attorneys on the list so that we can use that as the template.
Yep.
What we're doing is we're assigning we're doing the assignments on a rotating basis. So each of the attorneys who's applied, been accepted, is going to get a deed assignment, and then the next person on the list will get a deed assignment, and then it goes back all the way through, so that everybody is getting an equal number of assignments.
So good.
And that's where we are. There's a little bit of a delay in getting we need to send them the applications and the grant award, and Sandy's putting those together and is going to be getting those out to me so I can send them to the attorneys.
Awesome.
So we had talked about prioritizing certain restrictions, and given the fact that we have 8, and there was another attorney who asked about this, so we may have 9 attorneys, I'm a little less concerned about prioritizing because we're going to get them done.
Yeah, that sounds so good. Thank you so much. Really good work.
I say we give him a round of applause.
Yeah, I do too. Long overdue. Thank you, Paul. Any other discussion on the deed restrictions?
Nope.
Thank you so much. Really, it's well overdue, and glad to see that being done. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Do we want to set up another date, or we'll just hold it off for now and come up with an agenda? Sandy and I can come up with an agenda, and if any of you have anything specific you may want on the next, obviously you're going to be on the rolling agenda constantly.
Yeah.
But if there's anything else that somebody thinks is important to put on, we'll make a note for February to have Mike LePage back on for the Fire Museum, and then that's it. So could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. Thank you, everyone. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sure no one's, thank you.